Join ForumIAS Academy, trusted by hundreds of toppers, including IAS Rank 1 Shruti Sharma.
Today is 13th March 2023 and these are all the important articles of the day. Their relevance for prelims and mains examination are given here. You can go through it. Let us discuss the first article of the day, which is on same-sex unions. So why this is in news? Because Supreme Court is hearing petitions to recognize same-sex marriage. So what the petitioners want? They want same-sex marriages to be recognized under 1954 Special Marriages Act. So this particular Special Marriages Act legitimizes marriage between intercaste and interfaith couples. So the petitioners want same-sex marriages also to be recognized under this Special Marriage Act. So what is this Special Marriage Act? It is a civil form of marriage. We have personal laws which govern marriage, divorce, inheritance, etc. So we have Hindu personal law, that is Hindu Marriage Act. We have Christian personal law, that is Christian Marriage Act. So we have all these personal laws which govern the marriages. But if it is out of tradition, then a civil form of marriage is available which can be registered under the Special Marriage Act. And as we discussed earlier, same-sex marriages need to be recognized under Special Marriage Act. What is the background to this issue? Before understanding, we have to talk about the government stand regarding this issue. The government says that the institution of marriage has a sanctity attached to it, and in major parts of the country, it is regarded as a sacrament, a holy union, and a sanskar. In our country, despite statutory recognition of the relationship of marriage between a biological man and a biological woman, marriage necessarily depends upon age-old customs, rituals, practices, cultural ethos, and societal values. So this is the stand of our government in the Supreme Court. This is the basic philosophical stand. So what the government thinks, what is the line of thinking of the government, that is not that much important for prelims. This is more important for mains. There we will see whether the government stand is right or not, what are the pros and cons. But if we have to look at this issue from prelims perspective, we have to see from legal perspective. That is, what are the articles associated with this? What are the judgments associated with this? So in this angle, we have to prepare for prelims. So statutorily, religiously, and socially accepted norm in human relationship, because marriage between a biological man and a biological woman is recognized religiously. It is the social norm, and the same thing has been recognized statutorily in the form of laws. As I said earlier, the personal laws recognize this marriage. That is a heterosexual marriage. So if there is any kind of deviation from this kind of marriage, it is not for the courts to decide, and it can happen only through legislature. So the government is saying that it is up to the government of the day to introduce a bill in this regard and legalize same-sex marriage. It is not within the domain of the court. That is one argument from legal standpoint. Another thing is, there was this Navteej Singh Johar case in 2018 where intercourse between same-sex persons were decriminalized. So it decriminalized section 377. So what the government is saying is, through this judgment, the court decriminalized intercourse between same-sex persons, but through this judgment, the court has not legitimized the conduct. So what does this mean? The court has said it is not wrong. The court has not said it is correct. This is the correct way of living. That is what the government is saying. So there is a difference between not wrong and correct. So that is another argument of the government. Another thing is decriminalizing homosexuality is one thing, but acceptance or granting a legal legitimacy to same-sex marriage is not under fundamental right to life and dignity under Article 21 of the Constitution. So in this judgment also, the court did not read it along with Article 21. The court did not read marriage between same-sex persons under Article 21. They only quoted that the intercourse between same-sex persons, that is sexuality, can be considered under Article 21, but marriage is not a fundamental right under Article 21 with respect to the Navteej Singh Johar judgment. And another thing the government has said is, living together partners, that is same-sex, if the partners of a same-sex relationship living together is not comparable with a husband, wife and children. This is the traditional family unit according to Indian government, and the government is saying that living together same-sex couple cannot be equated with a traditional Indian family unit. From prelims perspective, you have to remember this judgment. Navteej Singh Johar case is sometimes seen in news in relation to, like that they might ask. And with respect to Article 21, same-sex marriage doesn't come under Article 21, but sexuality comes under Article 21. That kind of clarity should be there. Going further into the background of this issue, the petitioners, what are they saying? They are saying that non-recognition of same-sex marriage amounted to discrimination, and it struck at the root of dignity and self-fulfillment. So basically, non-recognition amounted to discrimination, which means it violates Article 14 and 15, and it stuck at the root of dignity and fulfillment. Again, they want this judgment to be related to Article 21. We have to wait and watch. Section 377 we also discussed in the previous slide in regards with Navteej Singh Johar case. So this particular section, it was there in the Indian Penal Code, and it criminalized homosexuality. So the section 377 says that unnatural offenses, and says whoever voluntarily has carnal intercourse against the order of nature with any man, woman or animal shall be punished with imprisonment for life. This was the original text of section 377. So how did this section 377 get decriminalized? Before that, the privacy judgment came. We all remember the Puttaswamy judgment, right? Puttaswamy case. So under that, privacy was enshrined as one of the fundamental rights under Article 21, and as per that particular judgment, sexual orientation is an essential attribute of privacy. So this was the seed for this particular judgment. As a result of the privacy judgment only, consensual adult gay sex is not a crime. The decriminalization of 377 happened. So the court said the section 377 contradicts article 14 and 21, but this is in relation to sexuality. What the petitioners want is they want this in relation to marriage. Both are different things. That clarity should be there. But even though the consensual adult gay sex is decriminalized, the parts in section 377 in relation to sex with minors, non-consensual sexual acts, bestiality, these things are still there. They are still criminal activities, but only consensual adult gay sex has been decriminalized. Having a short look at the Navtej Singh Johar judgment. So, in this judgment, the court talked about rule by the law versus rule of law. Rule of law meaning there is a just law. The law is facilitating equality, liberty, dignity. It is not arbitrary in nature. But rule by the law is it is arbitrary in nature. It just provides legitimacy to arbitrary state behavior. There is no intelligible differentiation between ambiguous terms such as natural and unnatural. Why? Because section 377 had a word unnatural offenses. It is a very ambiguous term. So in this judgment, it was ruled that it is rule by law. What we have currently in section 377 is not rule of law. It is just rule by law, wherein there is a legitimacy given to arbitrary state behavior. Just the policy of the state not to recognize same-sex relationships. And what does it mean when a sexual relationship is natural or unnatural? These are all very vague terms, very ambiguous terms. So it constitutes only rule by law and not rule of law, which is a much more holistic concept. So this is a comprehensive analysis of this particular case. Moving on to the next article, it is about the bid to achieve net zero waste. Why this is in news? Because central government is bringing in new norms for upcoming housing as well as commercial complexes. So the aim is to achieve net zero waste. So what is net zero waste? That means reducing, reusing and recovering waste and to convert them into valuable resources so that zero solid waste is sent to landfills. That is what it means. So we are reducing, reusing and recycling so that no solid waste goes to landfills. That is net zero waste. So what is the center planning to come up with? What might be the norms? So all the upcoming housing societies as well as housing complexes, they have to ensure net zero waste, and within the society itself they have to treat the liquid discharge, that is the grey water, which is the bathing water, as well as the sewage. So they should have facilities inside their society to treat the liquid discharge, and septic tank design should be integrated into the bylaws, and the government will come up with standards. So the septic tank should not be unscientifically constructed. If it is unscientifically constructed, then only it gives rise to manual scavenging. If it is scientifically constructed, we can come up with manhole to machine hole mode, which we will see later. And we need to have septic tanks in all the housing societies as well as commercial complexes, and there should be geotagging so that government can ensure that actual septic tanks are constructed. Geotagging of not only the septic tanks but also manholes so that there can be proper tracking. Only if we are properly tracking, we can implement policy changes. reducing GST on mechanized cleaning vehicles. So these vehicles will come in the place of manual scavengers. So they are planning to reduce GST on these vehicles, and the possibility of exploring the processed sludge as fertilizers. So once this processed sludge is there, the urban local bodies can probably market them, and they can also gain some revenue from that. And the government will review Indian standards for mechanized cleaning equipment, residential and commercial desludging. For this, the government will consider differential tariff, and if the norms are not followed properly, the center will ask the states to impose a legal penalty. So these are all some of the norms which are about to come into force. This decision is in pipeline. Why is this very significant? Or as I already told about manhole to machine hole mode, that is in budget 2023 to 2024, all cities and towns would be enabled for 100% transition of sewers and septic tanks from manhole to machine hole mode, which means there is a elimination of manual scavenging. So it is no longer a manhole, it is a machine hole. A machine will go into the sewage and it will clear the sewage. And it is also very significant in achieving United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, especially Sustainable Development Goal 6 subclause 3, which aims at halving the proportion of untreated wastewater and substantially increase recycling and safe use globally by 2030. At present, only 28% of wastewater is treated and nearly 70% of wastewater goes untreated. We have to reduce this by half. Only 35% of the wastewater can go untreated. That is the target we need to achieve within 2030. And if through these norms, the societies have inbuilt sewage treatment plants, it will be very helpful in achieving this target. And this norms, through this, whatever we are trying to implement, it will support circular economy also. That is the reduce reuse cycle. So here we saw that from the processed sludge, fertilizer can be processed and urban local bodies would market it, right? So this promotes the idea of circular economy, wherein there is no additional consumption. So within the economy itself, we are reducing and reusing. So through this, the sale of treated sewage can be institutionalized. Here we have discussed that. So institutionalization of sale of treated sewage, and it promotes circular economy, and it will be institutionalized through urban local bodies. So essentially, summarizing this article, it talks about the upcoming norms for residential and commercial complexes in order to achieve net zero waste, and penalties will also be imposed in case of non-adherence. Alright, so the next one is about rural-urban continuum, which is a very modern concept and it is widely in use also. It is discussed in papers, international papers, and this is important for GS1 in geography part. So for mains. So first we need to understand what is a rural-urban continuum. So it is an intermediate settlement formation where both rural and urban coexist. There is no distinguishable boundaries. So for example, if you are traveling in the Mumbai local train, so the nature of the railway stations will change as you reach from the center of the city and go to the suburbs. So there is a continuum here. We can't directly distinguish that this is the core of this is in the core, but this station is not in the core. There is a continuum. Progressively it will get rural, or if we are moving in this direction, progressively it will get urban. That is what rural-urban continuum means, wherein rural as well as urban functions coexist without distinguishable boundaries. Why these things happen? Why does rural-urban continuums form? It is because of complex geographical, cultural, economic and historical processes. So basically, due to these processes, there is a rural-urban continuum. So, in this rural urban continuum, it is a graded curve of development. That is, it is a graded curve of development, and where you are situated in this determines how much opportunities one gets. As we go progressively urban, the development is more and opportunities are more. So in that context, rural urban continuum is important from geography point of view as well as sociology point of view. It is developing because of several factors. It is a geographical phenomenon, but it also affects your socio-economic status. That is the significance of rural urban continuum. Moving on. So, in order to make effective policy decisions, it is important to understand rural urban continuum. So, we need to address several problems that is plaguing modern cities like environment, natural resource management. This can be successfully carried out if the concept of rural urban continuum is properly understood. And there is a Desakota study team. So Desakota is a Indonesian language term. Indonesian term that essentially means this rural urban continuum only. So this study team was christened as Desakota study team, and they emphasized on understanding the changing relationship between ecosystem and livelihoods under diversified economic systems across rural urban continuum. So if we see, there is a diversified socio-economic system. As we already saw, it is a graded curve, so there will be diversified levels of socio-economic development. And across these different grades, what is the relationship between ecosystem and livelihood? That needs to be studied. So this is what the Desakota study team recommended. And we have to provide affirmative public policy actions and distributive justice. So if we take the example of Kerala, there was affirmative public policy which promoted distributive justice and decentralization. So what this led to was, instead of rural urban differences, there was very good rural urban linkage. So this can be directly quoted in your mains answer. We have to go from rural urban differences to rural urban linkage, and for that we need affirmative public policy. In order to have this kind of affirmative public policy, first there needs to be an understanding of the issues, understanding of what is the relationship between ecosystem and livelihood, what is the level of development in this graded system of rural urban continuum. Only if this understanding is there, there can be affirmative public policy. So why is there a rural urban continuum? How does it sustain? Like, what are the inputs to this rural urban continuum? That we need to see. Today, the transport and communication, they have become modernized. There is a very good access to energy. There are pipelines. And through this, there is uninterrupted gas supply. And there is increasing affordability of private as well as public transport. Today, lot of cities have metros. And in terms of private vehicles also, there are e-vehicles. So there is an increasing affordability in this regard. And there is a penetration of economic and other networks. There is a strong case for optical fiber networks. Because of this, there is excellent internet connectivity even in remote areas through Wi-Fi. So these phenomenon, better transport, better energy access, better networking, all these things are the input for rural urban continuum. These promote the rural urban continuum. So currently, what is the scenario with respect to rural urban continuum? Rural hinterlands are connected to multiple urban centers. Say for example, if we take the state of Kerala, if we take a rural area in remote Kerala, it is connected to multiple urban centers. It can be connected to Hosur, it can be connected to Chennai, it can be connected to Bangalore, right? The same rural hinterland is connected to multiple urban centers. And there are push-pull factors for both urban and rural areas. What does this mean? In rural areas also there is a push factor. That is because of lack of livelihood. In urban areas also there is push factor because of the pollution, lack of resources, etc. In urban areas also there is a pull factor. Pull factor in terms of very good opportunities. In terms of rural areas, again there is a pull factor in terms of clean environment. So for both rural as well as urban areas, there are push-pull factors. So in this continuum, there is a mixed economy zone that is created. So people also want best of both worlds. There are push-pull factors in both the entities. So an in-between is created. That is rural-urban continuum. That boasts mixed economy. Okay, so this is the current scenario, and what needs to be the approach if there are multiple rural and urban continuum that is created across the country. What needs to be the strategy? There should be a systems approach. That is, there should be a comprehensive plan for city. So there is a central city, there is the suburban area, and there are the surrounding towns, then the villages. So there should be a comprehensive plan for all this, not just the city. Otherwise, what happens? These villages are governed by Panchayati Raj institutions. These towns are governed by urban local bodies. The city has municipality. So there is a breakage. They all work in silos. They all work in separation. So there should be a comprehensive plan. So we should focus on reaching a post-urban world where there is no dichotomy. Already we are moving towards a post-urban world. There is no dichotomy. There is a village inside a city and there is a city inside a village. So that is what is the reality today. And in order to develop a proper systems approach, the rural-urban linkages must be mapped. So we can use satellite data and integrate it with sensors, so we get proper data, and using this data as input we can create these kind of comprehensive plans which gives rise to systems approach, and we can better travel towards a post-urban world in which the rural-urban dichotomy does not exist. So essentially this particular article talks about rural-urban dichotomy. What is it? Why it is created? What should we do with it? What should be the policy making processes that needs to be followed to deal with it? It's a very enriching editorial. You can also go through it and make notes so that you can directly use in your GS1 geography as well as society part in mains. Moving on to the next article of the day, it is about Rajasthan's right to health bill. So this bill has proposal related to mandatory free and affordable medical services in hospitals, clinics, laboratories in both public and privately owned institutions. So this is a very lofty proposal. First we will see what are the provisions of the bill, then we will see the analysis. So it provides rights to both patients as well as the healthcare providers. So there is an obligation on the government to protect these rights to provide funding, and there should also be a grievance redressal mechanism by which these rights are protected. So this particular bill proposes free checkups, free drugs, diagnostics, emergency transport and care at all public health institutes with affordable surgeries. So this bill is actually saying that a medical service is a public service. There are almost 20 rights which are listed in this bill, which include right to informed consent, to seek information regarding diagnosis and treatment, receive treatment without discrimination on the basis of caste, class, age, gender, etc. And the government will provide with mandatory funding, and it also proposes a human resource policy wherein there is equitable distribution of medical professionals both in rural as well as urban areas. So it tries to improve access, and it also tries to improve affordability. All these things are targeted through the Rajasthan Right to Health Bill. So in relation to this bill, what does the constitution have? So right to health, the constitution doesn't explicitly talk about right to health, but it is derived from article 21, which talks about right to life. Further, from the DPSP, Directive Principles of State Policy, we have Article 38, which promotes welfare of people, Article 47, which directs the government to meet the nutrition and health requirements of population. Now, courts have used these two articles in relation to providing affordable health care. These are the constitutional provisions related to right to health. But this bill is criticized on account of ambiguity over funding. How will the funding be provided? If a surgery is carried out in a private hospital, will the government reimburse? Within what time frame they will reimburse? Will they reimburse the hospital or will they reimburse the patient? There are a lot of ambiguities regarding this. There is over regulation. If the medical service has to be provided at a low cost, then there will be price capping, right? Price capping of private hospitals and clinics. And so the private hospitals, doctors are complaining of over regulation, and there is no mention of a designated time frame within which the rules. So there is a law which is a skeleton, and to implement this there has to be rules. There is no deadline that is specified, and the bill guarantees right to health. How? Which is a very ambiguous term, and there are no tangible definitions. What will they do to guarantee? That is not mentioned in terms of tangibility. So that is also a aspect of ambiguity in this bill. All right, so we'll move to the final article of the day, which is about glow scope. Why is it in news? It is because researchers at Winona State University in Minnesota, USA, they have created a design for glow scope, and it is a very important discovery in order to democratize fluorescence microscopy. Fluorescence microscopy will become more accessible because of this new design. So before glow scope, we had fold scope. So it is a simple handheld microscope which is made entirely of paper, and within 30 minutes it can be put together and it works like a normal microscope which we have used in our schools. So this fold scope, it democratized the world's access to optical microscopy. Now we are looking at democratizing fluorescence microscopy. Now we have to understand what is fluorescence microscopy. So basically, what is an optical microscope? That is a microscope that we used in schools. What does it do? So it views an object and sees how it absorbs, how it reflects, or how it scatters light. Depending on that, we will be able to see the structure of the organism, on how it absorbs, reflects and scatters visible light. But in fluorescence microscope, it will study based on how an object re-emits light. So that is the difference between optical microscopy and fluorescence microscopy. So the light that is emitted, it is of a higher wavelength. Lambda stands for wavelength. So compared to the incoming wavelength, it will absorb and it will re-emit the light, and this will be of higher wavelength compared to the incoming light. So not all particles are able to re-emit light. The particles that are capable of re-emitting light are called fluorophores. So before placing this particular object under the microscope, it is infused with this fluorophores. So there is a tissue culture or cell culture. So this is infused with fluoroscope. Then it is placed under the microscope so that we can see how this particular object re-emits light. Not only that, this fluoroscope, they can move within the cell or move within the nucleus wherever they are. So we can also map the internal structure. What is the shape? What are the characteristics? So fluorescent microscopy is a very big upgrade compared to optical microscopy. So it is hinged on this entity called fluorophores, which are capable of re-emitting light at a higher wavelength. So now the new glow scope prototype, how does it improve access? The important thing is it is using a smartphone and it is using simple LED flashlight. So the smartphone lens will be used, and with that we can also zoom in and out. So that way the new device, the new glow scope model improves the access. So is it truly accessible? That is a question mark, because if you have to place an object under the glow scope, you have to first inject it with fluorophores. You should have suitable biological samples, you should have suitable fluorophores, and you should also have suitable LED flashlight which will enable fluorescence. So all these things are a bit complex. So in that way, glow scope is not as accessible as a fold scope. So what we can do is the schools, the resource crunched laboratories can use a combination of these fold scopes as well as glow scopes. So from this, important thing is to concentrate on fluorescent microscopy and this fluorophores. This may be asked in prelims. So now we will discuss some previous year questions. These are from pre-2016. So the question states, with reference to the cultural history of medieval India, consider the following statements. Siddhas or Siddhars of Tamil region were monotheistic and condemned idolatry. Lingayats of Kannada region questioned the theory of rebirth and rejected the caste hierarchy. Which of the statements given above is or are correct? A. 1 only, B. 2 only, C. both 1 and 2, D. neither 1 nor 2. Both of these statements are correct. This belongs to Bhakti movement part of the syllabus, where they questioned the pre-existing notions of religion and they were more liberal. They questioned idolatry, they questioned the theory of rebirth, they questioned the caste system, they questioned the status quo. Both these statements are correct and answer is C. Next question. Which of the following best describes the term import cover, sometimes seen in the news? A. It is the ratio of value of imports to the GDP. So it says imports to GDP ratio, that is first option. Second is it is the total value of imports of a country. C. It is the ratio between value of exports and that of import between the country. D. It is the number of months of imports that could be paid for by a country's international reserves. So answer is D. So that is why our foreign reserves became important. In COVID time, our foreign reserves touched almost $400 billion. So with this only we are paying for our imports. How much dollars we have? That is import cover. When we exhausted this only, we had the 1991 crisis, which ultimately led to the LPG reforms. So this is another topic of the day, but we have to remember what is import cover, which is how much month of dollar reserves are left for us to keep importing at the same rate we are importing. Answer is D. Next question. Consider the following pairs. Community sometimes mentioned in news in the affairs of 1. Kurd, Bangladesh, Madhesi, Nepal, Rohingya, Myanmar. So which are correctly matched? So Madhesi, Nepal is correct. Rohingya, Myanmar is correct. Kurd is not Bangladesh. Kurds are in Syria, Turkey region. So answer is C. Final question is terms seen in the news and their origin. Annex 1 countries: Cartagena Protocol, Certified Emission Reduction CER, Nagoya Protocol, Clean Development Mechanism, Kyoto Protocol, which is correctly matched. So all these terms, these three terms are associated with Kyoto Protocol. So answer is C. 3 only. That's it for today's discussion. Follow us on all the social media channels, and this is Indumati signing off. Have a good day. Thank you.